Cost of Hope. This is the name of the first S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 expansion that is set to release this summer. That's right, the DLC was revealed on March 26, with an announcement trailer and a few other interesting sources, including the Steam store page and an Xbox Wire article. There's a lot of things to go through, including spoilers, so take care, and let's begin with some general information. The description of Cost of Hope is as follows. The fragile peace between duty and freedom stands on the brink of collapse. The hotlands of the zone, forbidden for decades, now call to stalkers. New dangers or perhaps wonders begin to emerge. Prepare to embark on a new expedition into the zone in this massive non-linear expansion, where dozens of hours of gameplay, unforgettable stories, and twisted characters await. A new chapter of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R saga begins, shaped by your choices and actions in a journey you must survive, endure, and explore. A chance to learn the cost of hope is upon us, stalkers. Additionally, I can tell you that this expansion has been in the works for a long time, ever since the game released in fact. Skiff will remain the protagonist, and this new story will take place at the same time as the events of Heart of Chernobyl, most likely after the signal and before the point of non-return of the game. It is said that the DLC's storyline will begin when Skiff receives a certain PDA message at some point during his journey, and his decisions and choices of allies will definitely have an impact on how everything plays out. Moreover, the expansion will include at least 2 new regions, being the Iron Forest and the CNPP, as well as new weapons, gear, mutants, etc. Last but not least, Cost of Hope will answer some of the questions raised in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, but also in the original trilogy, and it constitutes the second piece of the new trilogy, right after Heart of Chernobyl. Another expansion is planned for much later, which will be the third and final part of this S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 trilogy. Before moving on to the trailer itself, we'll take a look at the cover art featuring 2 important characters to the upcoming story, Zulu and Mavka. For the most observant stalkers, these 2 could already be spotted in the Merry Christmas artwork posted last year by GSC. Zulu returns from Call of Pripyat, where he appeared as a lone dutier who accompanied Tachenko on his legendary trip to Pripyat. He cannot be met in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 just yet, but is mentioned in many instances, and will even send a message to Skiff if Lieutenant Semidumov is killed during his assault on the bandits. According to various PDA entries and duty dialogues, Zulu commands his own unit within the faction, composed of members who are tired of the current situation endorsed by their official leader, General Voronin. Indeed, both veterans and newcomers to duty seem to long for the group's glorious days from before the peace treaty imposed by the Ward, back when they actually fought the zone and their rival faction Freedom. Therefore, it seems the plot is evolving towards a fracture within duty, with certain members taking action by joining Zulu's squad, while others remain loyal to Voronin and his more passive approach. Mavka, on the other hand, is a brand new character who currently occupies the position of announcer in the arena. However, it is speculated that she is plotting in the shadows against Freedom's leader Mikluha in order to take his place. Indeed, someone tasked the Shah, a gang leader backed up by Freedom, to organize the assassination of Mikluha with the help of a silenced pistol placed in a nearby stash. And that someone is most likely Mavka. While her introduction is much sneakier than Zulu's so far, I bet she won't hesitate to get her hands dirty when the appropriate time comes. The weapon she has on the artwork appears to be a G3, a brand new addition to the zone's arsenal. As for Zulu, he seems equipped with a special Saiga, at least in this shot. Also, could there be something going on between these 2? I'm not so sure. So to recap, we've got civil wars brewing within both Duty and Freedom, with Zulu and Mavka ready to defy the authority of Voronin and Mikluha respectively. Keep this context in mind when we look at the trailer. The artwork also features the sunflower as a symbol of Ukraine, as well as the CNPP and Duga in the background. The power plant is a huge focus of the DLC, and we'll talk more about it later. As for the Duga, GSC has been subtle with the teasers about it. In fact, we've received several small, seemingly unimportant posts about Duga over the course of several months. One about its dedicated cooling towers, another claiming only Duga knows the truth, then one about its huge technical corridor, and more recently one on the crystal antenna nearby. Furthermore, there was an ambience video called Zone Life Sounds of Duga, featuring Duty soldiers and the inscription "The Zone Must Die", possibly linking the radar with the plot of Zulu and Duty's internal struggles. But maybe I'm reading too much into this, we'll see. Another possibility is that the art represents the smaller Duga from Lymansk, a location rumored to be coming back within the expansion. GSC has been extremely quiet about Lymansk, so I guess they don't want to spoil a good surprise. But more on that soon. The trailer begins with the traditional shot of the door about to open, only this time the scenery is a bit different. Leaves and ivy cover the tiled walls, while the Duty and Freedom symbols can be spotted on the electrical panel on the left side.
This story is full of mysteries, like the zone itself. I could never understand why those guys can't just live in peace. The zone has enough to offer without spilling blood over it. When I heard what happened that sunny day, a chill ran down my spine.
I was there. It was night, and it was raining.
This first cutscene takes place at the Arena Bar, kept by Ganja in the Freedom-controlled Rostock. Instantly we notice the glass surfaces are actually transparent, an improvement over the current state of the game. Skiff is sitting alone, his back to a group of random stalkers that he is eavesdropping on. One loner has begun telling a story, a tale about the day peace between Duty and Freedom was broken. Skiff, though, knows this guy is only a second-hand source, because he was actually there when it happened. Before we go into his flashback, I want to take a moment to appreciate our hero's drip here. Full black sunrise, hood and face mask, you know he means business.
Do you call this peace, Voronin? Is this what peace looks like to you? My guys, they let your men in, shared their food, and what did they get in return? According to Section 6, Paragraph B of the D4 Agreement, in case of suspicion regarding one of the parties attacking the other, the affected party has the right to secure and surveil a member of the suspected aggressor.
No one is being taken!
That is my decision to make.
That's the end of D4.
These were the bits of the conversation that we got from the trailer, stitched up by yours truly. Even though we are clearly missing some parts of the cutscene, we understand what is going on. Envoys from Duty, that is General Voronin along with the Zulu and a solid escort, are meeting with a representative from Freedom and his own guys. For some reason, Skiff is also there. We currently do not know who the man from Freedom is, since it is clearly not their current boss Mikluha. It could be another one of their former leaders, such as Lukash, Loki, or even Chekhov, the actual founder of the faction, considering none of their demises were confirmed. The line, "My guys let your men in and shared their food," could refer to the situation at Yanov station back at the times of Call of Pripyat, when Freedom had control of the area first, but allowed Duty to take shelter inside when an emission suddenly arose, leading to both factions sharing the camp for a while. However, the line could also simply refer to the general situation in Rostock, where freedomers still allowed dutiers to visit the bar and have a good time despite owning the place. Anyway, the reason for this meeting is obvious. Tensions have been rising between the factions, and it is implied Freedom suspects Duty to have attacked them, as their leader invokes D4 Section 6 Paragraph B. Indeed, D4 is the official peace treaty that was signed by the factions when the Ward took over the zone, and here we learn about one of its specific effects. If a group suspects another group to have attacked them, they can detain one of their members as compensation. In the current state of the game, the situation between Duty and Freedom escalates only after the signal and the destruction of SIRCAA, which shattered the entire balance of power within the zone. The Ward was busy dealing with their own problems, so they couldn't stop a new faction war to start brewing. It is unknown who shot first, since Dutiers claim Freedomers started it and vice versa, but the fact remains that the conflict has been sparked. For the moment, this only remains confined to NPC dialogues, and Skiff cannot partake within the war nor witness any skirmishes between the Red and Green boys. But with this expansion, this is about to change. Therefore, it is clear this meeting and the whole DLC will take place after the signal. Back to our scene. It seems Voronin didn't agree with the demands from Freedom and declares D4 to be over, before ordering his men to pull out. This must be the event that kickstarts the entire storyline of the DLC and an open conflict between Duty and Freedom. On a more technical note, people noticed some nice pieces of equipment on the elite Dutiers. Customized weapons with various attachments, including laser designators, new NVGs, and stylish exoskeletons. One can only hope this much variety will be added to NPCs in the game world, and not just in scripted cutscenes. Lastly, we have the Mi-8 helicopter in the background, usually used exclusively by the Ward and IPSF. Duty, however, do seem to be able to get their hands on choppers whenever needed, considering they are an ally to both the Ward and IPSF, and one line of dialogue from Clear Sky even suggests Duty to have their own helicopters. Moving on, I compiled the scenes from the CNPP and the lines that I believe are spoken by Zulu.
There can be no compromises in this war. We are the ones standing between the zone's plague of filth and ordinary people.
I think this philosophy depicts Zulu and the old Duty pretty well. The horrors of the zone must be stopped, whatever it takes. Now we've got to talk about the CNPP. Its introduction in the trailer is pretty cinematic, with an iconic shot that throws back to the old days of Shadow of Chornobyl. The angle is similar to the famous photo taken by Strelok on his first trip there. The plant being an important focus of the expansion is not a surprise, because it has been teased on multiple occasions already, so I propose we rewind a bit to gather even more info. The CNPP was first shown in the New Year teaser, where the thick fog dissipated to reveal the huge silhouette of the plant in the background. The scene takes place in front of the main entrance sign, around which we can see the aftermath of failed military attacks on the plant, along with several details reminding of the original trilogy: the twisted trees, the skeleton hanging there, and what seems to be the burnt fuss anomaly that has been absent from Stalker 2 so far. Moreover, the roof of the sarcophagus appears to be on fire, just like it was in both Shadow of Chornobyl and Clear Sky. The video snippet from the store page of Cost of Hope suggests the original scene was a flashback from right after Operation Monolith, the huge military assault from May 2012. Another short scene from the trailer shows the so-called Golden Corridor of the CNPP, a famous landmark that runs across the entire structure of the power plant to connect all 4 reactor blocks. Interestingly, the corridor is lit and has been maintained in good condition, leading some to believe this might also be a flashback. Furthermore, the sign indicates we are next to Unit 1, a hint we will be able to visit much more of the plant than what we could in Shadow of Chernobyl. Speaking of which, it seems the background of a previous music video released by GSC might be the control room of Unit 1, which featured many Easter eggs and clues about what we may see in the future of the game. Firstly, a transparent glass and an inscription hint at the planned Unreal Engine upgrade from version 5.1 to 5.5.4. Secondly, the binoculars left for all to see are a reminder that they should be added at some point. Thirdly, diagrams on the table point towards Yantar and Lab X16 that we will see later in the trailer. I remind you that the brain in X16 is speculated to be the source of the radio signal from the story's Untold update, the so-called Zombie FM frequency, that may very well have been responsible for the demise of the stalkers inside this control room. Going back to the trailer, Skiff prepares to rappel down directly into the destroyed Reactor 4. How cool is that? We can see the giant lid that was blown away back in 1986, along with the distorted fuel rods all over it. Also, it's raining directly into the room, indicating that the sarcophagus has been breached. The structure was already heavily damaged in Shadow of Chernobyl, but not to the extent that the entire roof was missing. So I'm not sure what is going on here. Granted, they could never build the new sarcophagus in the universe of S.T.A.L.K.E.R due to the anomalous zone, and the plant could have been further damaged during the various military assaults from the past. If SIRCAA had not taken the monolith device away, this is exactly where we would have found it, so perhaps they made a hole in the roof to take it out via helicopter. Okay, let's keep going before the theories become too crazy. This is one of the reactors that remained intact, well, mostly, viewed from the hole above the core, so either Unit 1, 2 or 3. Skiff proceeds to fight poltergeists on top of the fuel rods, using the already familiar Fora assault rifle. I don't have much to say here, the details of the CNPP interior look great, and I'm happy we will get to visit more than just the sarcophagus. Next up, we shoot some snorks in a large underground tunnel that looks very similar to the Pripyat 1 underpass that connects the Jupiter underground and the Foundation facility. So far, we have no indication that the Jupiter factory and the underpass will be included in the DLC, so it could be another location that has the same design because the construction of underground road networks within the zone was standardized. In fact, there is the possibility these tunnels are all connected together as part of one giant hub from Project X. Another detail is the fact Skiff is using the alternative aiming method with the SIRCAA, something that is currently only available with NVGs in the game. It was a fan request to be able to use this kind of aiming whenever we want, and it seems GSC is gonna deliver. We then see Zulu and Voronin engaged in fierce melee combat, as Skiff is stunned on the ground. Zulu disarms the general and starts beating him, while Skiff reaches for an AK to intervene. This scene illustrates the peak of the dispute between the two men, so far, as they were always able to put aside their differences until now. Furthermore, the action takes place on a cart belonging to some sort of underground transit system, possibly the monorail that is rumored to be connecting some of the X-Labs, a glimpse of which can be seen under Zaton and SIRCAA. Right afterwards we get jumped by a Snork from the platform, but Zulu comes to the rescue using the same AK with grenade launcher that Skiff tried to grab earlier. A few details to notice here. The mask of the monster was knocked away by a bullet, and the train is on the move. It was stopped during the previous segment, so I think these two scenes could take place in the same cart, but probably not at the same time, like the trailer would want us to believe. In fact, it is possible the part with the Snork actually happens before the fight with Voronin, but to make sure, we'll have to wait and see. All in all, this teases the escalating tensions from within Duty, and the fact we'll be using one of Project X's old tram systems to travel underground. My theory is that it could be one of the ways to reach the CNPP, and perhaps there will be different paths leading there depending on who you decide to help. For example, siding with Freedom would mean going through the Iron Forest to get to the plant, while going with Duty would involve an underground trip. To finish with the CNPP, we can wonder what purpose it will play in the expansion, and what we will be able to find there. According to Richter, the plant was already pillaged, and we know the very thing that drove stalkers there, the Wish Granter, was taken away to SIRCAA. The location being an empty death trap was also confirmed by the story of Crest and Sledgehammer, who went to the sarcophagus looking for artifacts, but only found a deadly dose of radiation. This quest line also revealed that the plant is under lockdown by the IPSF, a fact that is supported by the checkpoint at the entrance of the Iron Forest. Speaking of which...
According to Section 6...
Unfortunately, this is the only glimpse of the Iron Forest from the trailer. Fortunately, this is a location we already know quite a lot about. The current description and concept art depict the giant power grid substation as a maze of pylons and rusty antennas, full of electrical anomalies, some of which can even already be seen in-game by visiting the place out of bounds. If I had to guess, I'd say we might find an electro-arch anomaly there, along with the crashed Stingray 2 and secret testing workshop from Call of Pripyat. Also, the location seems to be full of old psi emitters that once blocked the way to the center, so I expect to meet a lot of zombies. Our brand new scene reveals that nature took over concrete and metal with some nice vegetation, and electros will not be the only anomalies encountered there, since we spot a chemical bubble. Besides, I love the thick fog weather effect we got going on here. Now for the elephant in the room, the weapon. This appears to be a unique variant of the G3 we've seen on Mavka's artwork, the Fallschirmjäger or paratrooper version in English, featuring a shorter barrel than the standard model. The inscriptions on the gun's side also reveal its in-game name will probably be GP3A, which makes sense considering the G36 is named GP37, and its caliber will be 7.62 by 51mm NATO, which is brand new for the game. Next up, we've got a bunch of scenes from SIRCAA after it was destroyed during the signal. In the first shot, we see that the Institute has been ravaged by several fault anomalies, the same kind that damaged the perimeter at the very beginning of the game. We also notice an unidentified new assault rifle with a sight and suppressor. Some claim it's an HK433, others a CZ805. I'm not sure myself, so I'll let you decide. The second shot takes us to a new part of SIRCAA, located underneath the giant glass dome at the Anomaly Research Lab. So not only will the expansion allow us to return to the Institute, but it will also expand it. The dome itself has been partially shattered, allowing rain to pour inside. I am not 100% sure, but I think this place is the artifact farm mentioned by Dalin to be his main project here at SIRCAA. The idea was to utilize anomalous energy within a controlled lab environment to mass-produce artifacts and eventually be able to synthesize the Alpha. While the farm never succeeded in making an Alpha or any other Arch artifacts for that matter, it did a wonderful job at creating normal artifacts of all kinds. See these tiny round shapes all around the room? Again, I could be wrong, but I think they are the containers in which the artifacts are formed, a concept which is illustrated within the art books for the game. Moreover, it seems we will get new attachment possibilities, as I'm pretty sure this site combination is currently impossible with the SVU. The third and last shot shows a skiff looking for artifacts inside the ruins of the ARL building, in a room we passed through when we first visited the Institute. I was always curious about the exact purpose of the device here, but it does not really matter anymore now that it lies in pieces. The hunt is carried using a Svarog detector, a new addition to the game. The Svarog was initially introduced in Call of Pripyat as an improvement of the Veles, with the added ability to display anomalies on the screen. In S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, this characteristic was given to the Veles by default, and the Svarog disappeared, at least until now. It is unknown how it will differ from the Veles, since they appear to function the same in this footage. Perhaps the Veles will be nerfed, with the anomaly scanner removed and reserved for the Svarog, like it was in Call of Pripyat. Or maybe the Svarog will gain another specific feature, for example being able to interact with spatial anomalies. Overall, I like the idea of going back to SIRCAA after it was ravaged by anomalies, mutants and monolithians following the signal, but we don't know why we would do that in the first place. At first glance, there could be many valuables to recover from the ruins. After all, the monolith device and many other technologies were left there. Sparkers themselves went to the Institute shortly after its collapse to pick up some goodies, but it's anyone's guess what they were able to salvage. Another idea would be tied to the underground train system we already talked about. Indeed, we know about a monorail going underneath the Institute, so perhaps we will have to investigate it as a potential way to travel to the CNPP.
Whichever way we go, we always end up in the same exact spot. That's justice, I suppose.
Remember when I suggested the Svarog could interact with spatial anomalies? Well, the words you just heard were once spoken by General Tachenko, the founder of Duty, while he was trapped inside a space anomaly. He and his men tried to find a way out, in vain, as they would somehow always end up walking back to their starting place. Eventually they all died, leaving Tachenko alone to rot with his own thoughts, which he recorded on his PDA. This demise of the first Duty leader was discovered by Degtyarev in Call of Pripyat, when he used the Svarog detector to break that very space bubble, releasing their remains. The fact that this line of dialogue appears in the trailer alongside the Svarog cannot be a coincidence. Anyway, we've got 3 new scenes of close quarters combat to feast on. Firstly, Skiff takes down a merc using his trusty pistol, in what could be an underground facility from Project X. There is some kind of large circular device on the right side, possibly a psi-emitter of some sort, but I'm not so sure. I believe this scene is here to remind us that whenever the secrets of the zone are involved, the mercs will always show up. Cost of Hope might be about duty and freedom, yet the mercenaries will find a way to sneak inside the story. The end of the story's untold questline also teased a mercenary named Nord, who is rumored to be an important character in the DLC. Next, we see a dutier in exoskeleton grabbing Skiff with one hand, then throwing him to the ground, all while holding a weapon in the other hand. This looks like a brand new addition to the zone's arsenal, either an SVT-40 rifle or an SKS carbine. In real life, the SKS is chambered in 7.62 by 39mm, an ammo type that currently does not exist in S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2, so we could see it added alongside the gun. Yet GSC is no stranger to making weird caliber changes, so we never know. About the dutier himself, the mask could be a placeholder to not reveal the character too early, just like Strider was wearing a balaclava in the Come To Me trailer all the way back then. Otherwise, the only known member of Duty who we see fit in the scene is Jaeger, the guy at the concrete plant. Jaeger is a true master stalker, a mutant hunter who joined Duty to fight the zone itself. Thus it would make sense for him to be involved in the struggle with the Zulu and the others. But it's only speculation, of course. We'll have to wait and see. One thing that caught my eye are the consoles behind the Dutier, which are definitely designs from Project X. Considering the rusty atmosphere and unfinished look on the building, I'm gonna take a guess here and theorize this location is the interior of the Red Fortress, and the consoles could be part of S.T.A.L.K.E.R, chunks of which were featured in the newest art book. In real life, S.T.A.L.K.E.R was the supercomputer of the power plant, but in the world of S.T.A.L.K.E.R, it seems to have taken a new role and been relocated inside the Red Fortress. Indeed, S.T.A.L.K.E.R took part in the experiment at X11, and is even marked on the map at Block 5, so I'm really curious to see if it will appear in the expansion. Lastly, Skiff is violently attacked by a brand new enemy, which looks like a revised version of the Cadaver. In fact, the Cadaver is featured in the art book but was never implemented in the game, leading us to believe it will eventually make a comeback. While the monster presented here is quite different, with armored forearms, a special helmet and batteries on the back, the spirit of the Cadaver concept remains, an extremely aggressive humanoid created in the X Labs as part of some sort of super soldier project. Research papers from X5 mention the Universal Soldier Program in the context of efforts to turn controller mutants into soldiers, or vice versa, I suppose, so it could be that the Cadaver was part of the same initiative. Now, I must congratulate my friend Vatislavovich, who correctly predicted this helmet would be worn by the Cadaver. Yes, we've seen this helmet before, in the boiler at Duga next to Bonsai's tools, and in the CNPP control room from GSC's music video. Now we know exactly what it will be used for, but I'm sure there will be more secrets to uncover about the Cadaver. Moving on, GSC teased a pretty nice location, Lymansk, the forgotten city from Clear Sky. Skiff prepares to enter the tunnel leading to the entrance of the town, clearly marked by the good old sign. This spot does exist in the current build of the game, but it has much less detail and stands on the inaccessible bank of a radioactive river. Also, the scope here seems to be a new attachment for the AK. Then a shot of a derelict hospital. Sure, it could be a clinic in Pripyat or somewhere else in the zone, but come on, this has to be the Lymansk hospital, right? While it is not officially confirmed for Lymansk to be added in the expansion, I think it would make a lot of sense. You see, the Clear Sky faction managed to reach the CNPP by going through Lymansk, where there is an entrance to the catacombs located in its hospital. From there, it is possible to use underground tunnels connected to the Pripyat underpass to get all the way to the power plant. Therefore, one of the ways Skiff could go there is by taking the exact same path, and it might be that all the underground scenes we've seen in this trailer are snippets of that journey. In addition, remember that Lymansk was full of spatial anomalies, further tying it to the Svarog detector and Tachenko's last words from the trailer. Now, there is also the possibility Lymansk is not part of the DLC, but will still be added in a separate update. For the moment, we don't know for sure. Last but certainly not least, Laboratory X-16. The first scene depicts the whole of the lab down the elevator shaft, filled with strange machinery and catwalks. Further down we'll find the corridors that lead to the giant main room. Skiff is holding the Cracker shotgun with new camo and attachments, a sight and a suppressor.
Are you ready, Skiff? To discover the price of freedom.
The trailer ends with whom I believe is Mavka talking to Skiff, while we get the sinister reveal of the X-16 pseudobrain and a mutant embryo. I remind you that we've seen both of these before in various materials, such as the artbook and all the trailers, so we should not be surprised. Furthermore, and according to the questline from the story's Untold update, the radio waves that have been turning stalkers crazy, nicknamed Zombie FM, are literally a brain activity recording. Therefore, it is very likely that the pseudobrain is the source of the signal, and we will have to venture into X-16 to shut it down. It remains unclear how this thread is related to the CNPP and the duty-freedom conflict, though there must be a connection somewhere. As for the embryo, we do not yet know what it will do, but perhaps it will be gifted with psi or telepathic abilities. Alright, now that we've gone through the entire trailer, it's a good time to get into some closing theories. We still haven't answered the question, what will freedom and duty look for at the CNPP? One of the main goals of duty is to eradicate the mutants. Not just to continue killing them, because that doesn't work. They've been doing that for years and monsters always come back. No, what Zulu wants is to destroy the problem at its very source. That's right, I am pretty confident that somewhere in the zone, mutants somehow keep being produced. I'm not talking about blind dogs or other animals here, I mean the really nasty stuff. Humanoids, such as controllers, Buerers, and so on. Stalkers have been killing them from the beginning, and yet there's always more. I believe the key may reside deep underneath the power plant, and perhaps we will finally learn more about this huge mystery of the zone. As for freedom, their motives are more unclear, especially since they are less featured in the marketing so far. Their initial ideology involved studying the zone and sharing the findings to everyone so that all of humanity could benefit from its wonders. And I insist on the sharing part, because it is one of the things that separates them from, let's say, SIRCAA for example. Anyway, it is possible there is something for them to gain at the CNPP as well. Maybe whatever is used to create mutants could also revolutionize the fields of medicine, bioengineering, and so on. Or they will take part in this campaign just for the sake of opposing duty, who knows. I have already pictured in my mind an entire scenario on how the story could go, but I will refrain from sharing it in order to avoid accidental spoilers. I'm interested in learning what you think though, so make sure to share your opinion and ideas in the comments. That's all from me for now. Thank you for watching, stalkers, and happy hunting.